Hi y'all, this is JJ Jones with Jones & Company Realty and the latest edition of Quarantine Corner. Today, I'm really happy because I've got Bill Jurek with the Home Team as our guest home inspector and wizard of home inspections. So Bill, tell us a little bit about you, how long you've been in the business, etc.
Well, we started the business back in 1994. Back when we were still known as deal killers in the business. Home inspections literally at that time were happening in probably only about 10% or so of the total amount of transactions that were being performed at that time. As things changed and everything, that number from 10% has probably gone to at least 50% or more of all real estate transactions will have a home inspection as part of the process as we go through and through there. So we've seen the changes over the years. The fun is that we've grown and learned and fine-tuned our whole process, over those years with the help of brokers and agents over the years as their advice and everything. So we've been doing it, like I said, almost 26 years now. I'm very happy there. Over 35,000 home inspections in that time as well. So.
Well, you really are the expert at that. And there have been changes too. I mean, the
Lots.
ugly word radon and other things like that.
Yeah.
What's probably the biggest challenge you faced over the last few years?
Well, and there are the environmental things like radon and mold assessing and everything, and that's changed over the last 15, 18 years and stuff. But the bigger things right now that agents need to be aware of is the insurance industry and what they're making us go through, if you will, when it comes to home ownership and the different things. Homes as recently built as in the 90s right now have two major things that many insurance companies now are just saying you have to replace it or we're not going to insure your home. First one, of course, is polybutylene pipes. And that is the gray plastic looking pipes and common in the 90s. Again, if you go 1995 and a couple of years either way, very prevalent at many homes. That was what they would call like the Cadillac of the industry when you had the poly with the man-of-block system, exactly. That being said, the pipes don't fail. They had some issues with the fittings and stuff, and therefore in Southwest Florida, the amount of pipe failure has been basically non-existent. However, the fittings that connect one piece to the other in different places, sometimes those will get corrosion, there could be failure there. But the pipe itself doesn't fail. That being said, insurance underwriters don't care. They look to other evidence of things, particularly in well, everything is north of here, so in different regions, the Midwest, Northeast, and stuff like that, where they have a thing called winter, and a real winter, and expansion and contraction of these pipes. The failures in the fittings was much more prevalent up there, and therefore the insurance companies were paying off on claims unlike anything we've ever seen here. But it doesn't make any difference. When you're in the big pot of the insurance underwriter, they don't care if you're in Southwest Florida or Northeast New England. That's one of the things they want to see gone. Switching from plumbing to electrical, another thing that was common in the 90s is the Challenger brand of electrical panels. And many times they're having failures with them. And again, once they start paying off and something becomes, common in the process, it gives them the red flag. Not all underwriters right now are just flat saying no to Challenger panels, but some of the bigger ones in Florida here have already said, if you have one of those, we would like to see it replaced, or they'll at minimum charge you a much higher premium or not give you coverage at all. And again, very common in new construction in the 90s and again and through there. personal note, my home was built in '91. Fortunately, I did not have it, a Challenger panel, but my neighbor right next door to me did. And I saw firsthand what happened to his when his main breaker failed as we're taking gas cans and moving cars out of his garage, because the heat and the smell is enough to scare anybody. So that I've seen firsthand, and the reasons why that they're having concerns about that type of electrical panel. If you go back farther into, say, the late 70s, there was Federal Pacific, and these are very common, where they got the orange, and some even, the newer ones have the white tab ends on it there, and that's how you can tell they're a Federal Pacific panel. Again, down here we've had very few problems with them in through there, but again, it's not just our area where they're concerned, it's what's happened, nationwide and through there. Biggest problem with Federal Pacific panels is they're not making the breakers anymore. So if a individual breaker fails, there is no replacement for that. Some people, electricians, have actually gone to the point where they've taken old ones out, salvaged the usable breakers to make these repairs, but they're technically not manufacturing any new breakers, and that's why the insurance companies are having concerns with that. If you are on the listing side, or as far as that goes, the selling side, one other thing on electrical is homes built in basically 1970, 71, or 72. That was the 3-year period where they were using single strand aluminum wiring. And this is going to your regular outlets and switches and that, not just to your 240 connections there. And again, insurance companies will have issues with that. So if you're listing or have a buyer for a home that's built in those age, be real sure that your inspector is checking that out to be sure that you don't have the single strand aluminum wiring in the panel in through there. And we have found several homes in this area that have that condition. So you want to be sure about that.
Great tip, I wrote that one down, I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, and again, it's even you go down Winkler Road and some of the older ones on Fort Myers Beach, there's even a whole condominium building, wood frame condominium building on Sanibel that has aluminum wiring going through the whole thing.
Oh wow.
So anyways. But,
so when you go to a home inspection, what are some of the things that you most commonly see in a house?
Well, depending on the age, there's always going to be certain types of issues that are going to be an obvious concern. If the house is every bit of 15 years or older, we're very cognizant that roof, no matter what type it is prone to having some failures, particularly in the valleys and areas where you might not even see them on the inside of the house, because they'd be at the bottom and into the soffitted area where you can't see it. The more valleys you have, the more different configurations you have, but the bigger the chances are of having it, regardless of it being shingle, tile, any type of roofing through there, doesn't make any difference. Much of it can be easily repaired. To have a leak at the bottom of the valley doesn't mean that the whole roof needs to be replaced. But again, these are things that we'll see as we're going through the attic that might not be right evident to somebody just looking around at the outside of the roof, or without knowing where to be looking for.
And
this.
The customer needs to know you're not a licensed roofing contractor.
Correct.
So you would say you would recommend that they go and actually have a real, I don't think real, but a roofing contractor, a licensed one, check it out.
Correct. And again, in our area here, it's not very common, but something that was added 10 years ago, and yes, it's been 10 years now since the licensing process went in for home inspectors, is that home inspectors cannot hold their hand out to make any types of repairs that they call out in the inspection report. Even if the person doing the inspection is a licensed contractor and also has a licensed home inspector license there, they cannot, by law, by the statute, fix that roof when we find the problem in through there. prevalent on the East Coast, and they still do it, unfortunately, but it was not uncommon for a home inspector to say, oh yes, we got a roof leak over there and I can fix it for $500 or something like that. An inspector has to maintain the unbiased stance. We're, to find out everything that we can, and as I talk about all the time, we're paid cynics. Everything may look wonderful and great, but we're still going to turn on the light switches. We're still going to check the outlets. We're still going to check that attic to see if that roof is leaking. We're going to look under the sinks to see if there's a small trickle leak that nobody knows about. And so many times, as good as things look, that's what you're paying a home inspector for, is to be that cynic and to be the one that's going to take a trained eye and look at these items to be sure that everything is just as good as it looked. We don't have a problem saying it is just as good as it looks. However, that doesn't happen very often, and many times there's things that can be easily addressed but need to be found before a small problem becomes a much bigger problem. So,
well, small problems like caulking in the bathrooms and things like that, are those things that you look for and address in a home inspection?
we always check out any type of cosmetic type of defect to see if it may have already led to something a little more major. Things like tile walls in bathrooms and stuff, and if you see voids in grout and caulking that's checked and starting to crack and stuff, we'll check as best as we can to see if the walls are still solid, that there's no give and everything like that. But if there is just voids, and if it just needs re-caulking and everything appears to be good, solid, and in general good condition, many times if the buyer is present, and we always recommend that anytime they can, we'll just point those things out. If they're not, we're going to take a picture, we're going to show them, and we're going to let them know that these are cosmetic types of defects, as opposed to something that's going to need a licensed contractor to come in and further assess and repair as needed on these inspections. It's a fine line sometimes between cosmetic defects and what can be hiding behind walls that can't be seen. And as much as we try as hard as we can, many of these things can be hidden, if you will, sometimes, but you still want to take as much of a good look as you can. Remember, we can't just bore into anything, cut into anything. It's a visual inspection of the accessible aspects of the home or condo as we're going. We just had somebody call just last week that they're concerned about termites, and they want to start drilling holes to see if they could see exactly where they were. They don't own the house yet, and you can't do that type of stuff. Again, it's a visual inspection of what's readily accessible.
Just a note, if you do have someone who gets overly enthusiastic and punches holes or drills holes, the contract does cover that, and it requires that the buyer be responsible for fixing the home back to the way it was. So there's another layer there in the contract.
And that was good follow-up, because we had somebody that also wanted us to take a garden hose and spray it against all the sliding glass doors to see if they were leaking. And when I told her, I says, we can do that if you really want that done, but understand, any damage that is done is yours to repair. P.S. We didn't spray any sliding glass doors or anything. JJ just made the best point. Anything damage-wise that's done is the buyer's responsibility. A lot of people don't understand that little part of the FAR bar contract and through there. So you can start ripping and tearing, but just be careful as to how far you go with everything that you do there. So.
Any other common things that you find, like regularly in all the houses?
We talked about the insurance side, roof leaks. Not unusual if it's a single-family home with a garage door and this type of stuff, to find certain amounts of wood rot around any of the wood trim. Very, very common. The other window springs, the balancers are inside with the single hung windows. Very, very common that we find that type of stuff. You're always going to find the occasional little plumbing leak type thing, but usually that'll just be because of the age of the fixtures more than anything else.
What about mold, when you're talking about leaks
Well,
and things like that?
If there is moisture intrusion,
Okay.
there can be staining, and staining doesn't mean that it's mold. Things can fail. You can have something leak, you can clean it up in short fashion, and you may not have any type of mold growth, but you may have a small little indicator that there had been something leaking there. First, before I go any further, yes, I am a licensed mold assessor. Many inspectors are not. And for a licensed home inspector that is not a licensed mold assessor, to say something is mold, even though it may be true, is beyond the scope of a home inspector. He can say mold-like substance and have it further checked out if it's a concern, but for somebody just to arbitrarily say it's mold, for better or worse, takes a license. So keep that in mind. But again, not all moisture stains are going to lead to a mold condition. Yet if something is left unchecked, like that small little drip leak under your kitchen sink and you haven't looked under your kitchen sink in 5 years, yes, you could have mold growth going on back there that you may not have even realized. And when your house gets inspected, they will find that. Things can be hidden behind the walls. And if something's been ongoing, yes, you can have mold growth that's not visible in through there. When we do air sampling for mold analysis, what we're doing is taking a sample of the air that you're breathing, basically, and we take it right where the returns are for the air conditioning system or systems if there's multiples, just so you know, because everything is going back to that spot and then redistributing throughout the rest of the house.
Yay.
So even if it's just happening in the bathroom here, it's ending up in the master bedroom on the other side of the house if the ductwork's all interconnected there. So we take the air samples there to see if anything is at an elevated level, and that's compared to what's commonly found on the outside of the home. And if it is, based on what type of mold it is, it 9 times out of 10 will point to you exactly what the problem is and what needs to be corrected. Different types of molds are found in different types of situations. From Stachybotrys, which is the black mold, which got all the publicity literally 20 years ago now, that takes a consistent water source to grow and proliferate, to something as simple as Penicillium aspergillus type of spores, which I call the kitchen spore, which is comes from food products and many times is hidden behind the refrigerator, the oven, the range, different types of things. And then, breadcrumbs. There you go, penicillium. And this is what causes an elevated number on that type of spore. So there's many aspects of a mold analysis that can help you determine what, if you have a condition that needs addressing or not. But it's all good.
So when you find a mold indicator, it's the buyer's decision if they want to go further and have the mold test. And then it becomes the responsibility of the seller if there's something that could actually cause a health issue. Like penicillium is a household mold.
It's a household mold.
You don't need to have the guys in the hazmat suits come out and fix it.
99 times out of 100, it just needs a good, thorough cleaning. Keyword thorough. One of the funniest ones I had a built-in range top, and you could literally eat off the floor in this house. It was that pristine and that clean and not that old or anything. And this Penicillium aspergillus came up high, and then I went from underneath the range top and lifted it up, and there's every bit of a 1/4 inch of breadcrumbs and crumbs from food that are under the range top that you could physically not see. And that was the fix on that problem there. Got rid of that, retested, and everything was fine. Sometimes it can be that simple, sometimes it's not.
So carry it in or eat out. Don't use your stove. What's the weirdest thing you've ever found in a home inspection?
Guns, lots of them.
Oh, okay.
The weirdest thing actually was, yes, it was in a villa with an attached garage, and this goes way back when. and the seller wasn't going to let us up in the garage to look for roof leaks, the air conditioner, the air handler, that type of stuff. And finally I convinced him that we had to go up there, and he was ready for World War III. He had his trusses all racked out, and you don't have to necessarily put this in this, but and munition and everything, and that was probably the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Wow. We've
walked into conditions where I've literally found dead bodies on a bed, and we've also walked into what was supposed to be a vacant unit and have somebody come out with a gun pointed at me out of the bedroom.
Okay then.
So there's a lot of fun in our business, a lot of different things that can be, happening, and always everything's interesting. The good news in our business is everyone's a little bit different. It's not a cookie cutter business, and everything, you can see from time to time. I think guns and dead body probably sums up the strangest of stuff. Of course, we found marijuana being cooked in an oven, dried out, and low heat and everything.
Still illegal.
Yeah, back then it was very illegal. Oh no, that's a good question. I don't know, but that's a few of the things that are still front and center.
There's why you talk about licensing, because you're licensed
Yep.
by the state of Florida for home inspections. You're also licensed by the state of Florida for mold.
Correct.
What about radon, and like people want these things for home, you talked about insurance before.
Yeah.
These, like a 4-point and a 2-point and a 3-point and all of that. What is it, and is that part of a standard home inspection?
Well, let me take the licensing aspects of it first. Yes, for 10 years now, home inspectors have had to be licensed in the state of Florida, and the license renews every 2 years on July 31st, and this year is one of the renewing years. The other aspects of licensing that came into play at the same time is the licensed mold assessor and licensed mold remediator. A couple things about that. You can have both licenses, but you can't do both jobs on a single project. If I don't have the remediator license, but if I had the assessor and remediator and I found mold here and I knew how to fix it, I can't do both at that. They want some, severability there. Unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, many times mold remediation companies will have at least 2 license holders in the business, so the business keeps it, but technically like one person's doing one thing and the other person's doing the other, and I did say technically there. So that's how they kind of get around on that. But again, as a home inspector, I'm not going to be doing any kind of fixing, repairs regardless, so the same aspect goes through to the mold assessing part of the license there. The other thing that I'm also licensed is a radon measurement technician, and radon is present and prevalent here in Southwest Florida, particularly in condominiums, and by that, first floor condominiums to get more specific. Before I came here today, I picked up a radon monitor on a first floor condo on Fort Myers Beach, and it was, I can make it sound really bad, it was 3 times higher than the allowable limit of radon in the unit. And it's common in first floor condos that are of a concrete block construction. Not that it couldn't be in a frame building, but more prevalent than not in that. Just so you know, 4.0 picocuries, and that's the measurement term, is the allowable number in any residence, be it a condo, a single family home, or not. As an agent, just don't bear your head on this. If people know what radon is and it's not good enough just to say that you're not aware of any. Let them know that the testing is available if they want it. If they have any questions, feel free to call somebody like me that is a radon measurement technicians, and we can give them all the information they need to make the best decision for themselves. But again, let them make that decision. Don't just kind of bury your head in the sand on this one there.
That's a good point. Be the resource, be the source of the resource, and send them to the expert who can decide if they want to have the extra test or not. Never shove it off or say, no, you don't need it, or yeah, you should have it. Let them make that decision themselves.
Exactly.
Okay, those are those tests. Now what about all this stuff for inspections, for insurance and stuff?
Two basic types of inspection that you're looking for nowadays in the insurance industry. The first one is the 4-point inspection, and similar to what goes on in a regular inspection, it's more of a survey than an actual physical inspection of the property. In other words, are they looking to see if there's anything just slowly dripping on the plumbing? Not, but what they want is what types of pipes there are, how old the water heater is, that type of thing, if there's shut-off valves. Those are the basic questions there. When it comes to a roof, if it's a shingle roof, they want it to have at least 5 years of what they call useful life left in it. And just so you know, most underwriters, if it's a shingle roof and it's within that 16 to 20 year range, they will not issue insurance unless it's at a higher price. Their feeling is the age of a shingle roof, regardless of how good of a condition it is in, is 20 years. And again, they want you to have 5 years or more as far as useful life on shingle roofs. Tile and metal roofs, you can extend that out, and even if there's repairs, they don't get too worried about that as long as it's been done in a professional manner. The electrical panels we already discussed with the Challenger and Federal Pacific. That's what they're going to be looking primarily in through there. And again, the single strand aluminum wiring. And the last is just the air conditioning system and how old it is and whether it is operational and working within industry guidelines. Many times when those components, the air conditioning system, the water heater, again, the roof, anything gets to be 15 years or older, these will be red flags to the insurance company, and they may want correction done or may charge a higher rate based on the ages of that. But consult with your insurance agent on that as to what may be the areas of concern with the underwriter that's going to be writing the policy for you there. If you get past the 4-point inspection and everything's a go and you want to continue through with the purchase of the home, this is where wind mitigation will, under most circumstances, get discounts off the homeowner's insurance policies. I heard just earlier last week that somebody choked when they found out that the insurance on the home was going to be over $4,000, and that was prior to the discounts that came with the wind mitigation. And once they had the wind mitigation, they called me up and said it went down to less than $2,000 or more than half of what they were originally quoted. That's what a wind mitigation can do for you. It's going to get you discounts. It might not be that substantial, but it is going to get you discounts off this premium that you're being forced to pay. And any money that's better in your pocket than the insurance company pocket is a good thing for me. There's restrictions, and again, it's a state form, and we have to back it up with pictures. Some things, particularly in the older houses, there are things that you can do after the effect and get additional discounts then. But again, it goes basically to the age, geometry, different components, and whether it does have any impact slash hurricane protection to the glazed openings of the home. Keep one thing in mind: if one window doesn't have protection on it for the glazed openings, in theory, you don't get that credit. Insurance companies want everything. It's all or nothing when it comes to your windows is being protected, or you will not get that discount. So keep that in mind. And again, have your clients talk with their insurance agent to see whether it's cost effective. My house is built in 1991, and I don't have any impact windows in my house. However, I have plywood, I can put up protection and I can protect my house. But to spend thousands of dollars putting the protection into place, sometimes people would just as soon keep the money and hope for the best on that.
But it's their decision.
It's their decision, exactly.
So those are things for insurance purposes. The home inspection shouldn't override the home inspection.
No.
You really should have both. And then of course you talked about termites and things like that. If they're getting a loan, then they have to have a WDO, a wood destroying organism report. Is that something that requires a separate license than
Yes,
home inspector?
and that requires a separate license. Some home inspectors do their own termite WDO inspections as well. They work through a separate company and they hold a card that allows them to do that. We do it a little differently. We have a licensed professional that all they do is the termite inspection, the WDO. They don't even do any treatment when they find it. Again, we're just there to tell you what you got, not to hold our hand out to try to fix it. It's a critical part, particularly when you get into, I say older homes, yet we've found subterranean termites literally on a 4-year-old house in the baseboards. And it had already happened that new. Again, it's an additional charge, and it's up to the client whether they want to have it done or not. But you will never find anybody, myself or anybody, saying not to do it. Our climate is conducive to subterranean termites, drywood termites, and we're even finding some of the more different types of termites working their way this direction, even though they haven't been predominant in our inspection process. Again, it goes mostly the drywood termites and subterranean termites that we find here, but very important, regardless if it's a concrete block house or not. That's a question a lot of people ask. It's supposed to be block, what are they going to be chewing on? Well, there's furring strips behind the block, the baseboards. We actually had one house that they literally went between a bathroom wall all the way to the attic where we found the subterranean termites chewing on the trusses up there. So nothing was visible in the living area of the home, but once we got to the attic, the one series of trusses had become Swiss cheese. So
Yeah, so the thing that we're really recommending is that you always recommend to your customers that they have a home inspection, that they have the WDO, that they have other inspections like mold, radon, have the 4-point, have as many things as they can so that they feel comfortable making a decision to move forward. Because on the as-is, that gives them the opportunity to cancel. On the standard contract, then the sellers are obligated to fix things that are structural, which is outlined in there, and then we go back to the report.
correct. And one further point, if you have a client that's for whatever reason doesn't want to have any type of inspections of any sort, get that in writing.
Document
is very, very good. Even simple things like a radon test. I remember way back when somebody called up and said, we bought this condo and we're selling it now 5 years later, and they said it's got radon. I says, yes, and you initialed right where you didn't want the radon test on the inspection agreement that we gave you. Well, how come you didn't tell me there was going to be radon? We did. We told you that testing is available and you chose not to. And they had to put in a mitigation system after the fact. But everybody is looking for relief at some point. This person was ready to sue me to get me to put the mitigation system in. And they probably went right back to their realtor as well after they got the information from me about what they already had signed. So regardless, document in this business.
Yes, keep
Yeah.
copies of the home inspection report that your customer gets. Keep copies of every inspection report. You never know when you're gonna need it, and we're big on risk management. Now, we've been talking about it mostly from a buyer's standpoint. What are your feelings about agents suggesting to their sellers, we've just listed the house, should we have a home inspection and find out if there's anything that we have to disclose?
And as great as that sounds, literally last year, this is how many, if not less, that we did of pre-inspections. And again, we did over 1,500 inspections last year. As good as it sounds, for some reason, sellers don't like the idea of spending $500 to find out just what their potential problems could be. Sometimes, and it doesn't make any sense to me, but it's not me that you have to, prove that it works. If you do find roof leaks, they can be addressed and corrected, right away as soon as possible. You can document it as the seller that yes, we had this, we fixed it, and adds the credibility. Many times people don't do it because they think that the buyer, and the buyer does, still has a right to have their own inspector come through and recheck it. It just doesn't happen as often as you would think.
Yeah, I would think like if you inherited the house and you know nothing about it,
Right.
that it would be a good idea to support your sale price. If you can show that, hey, we've had an inspection, we know that it doesn't have the challenge, or we know it doesn't have all of these problems that you're gonna have, it'll increase the price and shorten the time of sale. I would think so.
and
I recommend
just-
it.
And just eliminate some potential hoops and barrels that you gotta jump through and stuff to get it to the closing table. Yes, we want to find as much as we physically can. Yes, we want to, we're not there to paint doom and gloom, but we're also not looking through everything with rose-colored glasses. Our hopes and ideals are to get everything so everybody's smiling at the end of the day and working just a couple steps closer to that closing table, because that's what it's all about.
Exactly.
And yes, there's all sorts of facets of it that could be, should be, and we wish it was being done, but sometimes people have their own opinions and own ideas on things, and there's nothing wrong with that either. So
No. And Florida Realtors is really enthusiastic about helping you as a realtor have tools in your toolbox. And we were just going over this with Bill. There's a wonderful little feature. It's called Share This, 10 Most Common Flaws. This is in a PDF right online with Florida Realtors. And for those of you who got your magazine, it's in this month's Florida Realtor magazine. So use the tools that you have as a realtor. Call upon all these experts to help you in your business. When you're working with a customer, talk to him first, or just call Bill and buy him a cup of coffee and get to know him and how he does business, so you can sell your services and his services better to your customers. So thanks for coming to Quarantine Corner. You look really good without a mask.
Indeed.
So stay safe and healthy.
Yes, please stay safe. Thank you.